a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room.
Possible ATA suspect there now, 4730 Crystal Springs Drive, in the parking lot above the merry-go-round. Two males, no further description, adding striping to a black Cadillac four-door, possibly exchanging plates, vehicle license Utah 2904, in California, Paul William Nora 011, code 216 3196.
Welcome to TIR, everybody.
Southwest Moreland Boulevard, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard.
1507 Metro, all units 1507 is following a code 37 vehicle, 770 Regal two-door. He is on the southbound Harbor Freeway from the Hollywood Freeway. It is a two-door Buick Regal.
They're playing my song.
Southwest units, all units, citizen reports, officer needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard. Citizen reports, officer needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard. Code 3 incident 3142.
Welcome, lab rats.
One in Hollywood, no Hollywood available. Domestic violence. 5139 Fountain Avenue. Code 2 RD 669 Apartment 8 Incident 227. Wilshire, City Wilshire 211 GT occurred 3921 Wilshire Boulevard. Vehicle taken is an 84 Thunderbird White. Possible license 1 Lincoln Zebra John 415. 1 Lincoln Zebra John 415. Northbound Grammar Street 5 to 10 minutes ago. Two male Caucasians, 20 to 25 years. Both had guns. Number 1 wearing white pants and a black shirt. Incident 329 Wilshire Unit handling identified. 2845 possible code Tom 8 in Alvarado. 2879 en route.
Don't you just love a great call to P. Diddy's house? Domestic violence, DV, a white party going down, 211 in progress. Welcome to TIR, everybody. So great to have you here. So great to have my good buddy Josh from the lab with us as well. And what I got to do real fast is check a setting so that I'm not blowing. Josh, great to see you, bud.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it. How are you?
Great. It's good to see you here on this Wednesday night. Dr. B's going to be with us as well. He's running a little late. Said he had a situation with a patient, so he's going to handle that. And then he'll be here. How's the sound? Everything working okay out there?
Sounds good to me so far.
Yeah, so far the board has been delivering for me.
It's holding up.
Yeah, holding up.
Yeah.
Holding up. How about yours? And thanks for the tips on this thing.
It works fairly well. There's just, I'm still trying to figure out the setting where you have multiple people where you don't have to switch back and forth between the settings. And, but hopefully, you know, because I've been in contact with the StreamYard engineers, and hopefully we can get that nailed down. But for now, we're able to use our SmartPad soundboards that frankly, I thrive on using. I've been using them since, day one. They're a big part of my show and what I do. And I know the same goes for you.
Well, I mean, you turned me onto it, so I was excited, once I started to figure it out. And I had a couple of glitches the other night. I was hitting a couple of buttons that I shouldn't have been hitting. And
I do it all the time.
yeah, you should see me drive. Anyway, we want to thank everybody for being here tonight, our subs, our Patreon members, and of course, our members here on TIR, and then all the lab rats that have come over for Josh from the lab. If you're not subscribed to his program over there, get over there at some point, and please hit the subscribe button. And a big thank you always to our mods. We have the best in YouTube and on YouTube. Of course, Teresa M, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Miss Sophia, and Laura. And I know you have some great mods as well over there, Josh, at the lab. Tonight, we've got a lot to cover, and I wanted Josh over here because, he's got a good sense of this P. Diddy stuff. And, there are a lot of things that we're going to go over, but we're going to go over primarily the federal indictment of Sean Diddy Combs, the rapper who's in jail and facing charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, moving prostitution across state lines. And of course, this indictment is pretty extensive, but I'm going to hit it pretty hard and explain a lot of the stuff that's going on in there. But there's other news today too. Josh, you heard about Barry Morphew? What the
I heard that his civil lawsuit was dismissed.
Yeah, it was thrown out. The $15 million lawsuit has now turned into nothing. And the judge said the problem with the investigations into her murder, he called them infuriating flaws. However, he referred to Linda Stanley on that problem and, some other folks that she met with from YouTube. But there was enough probable cause to arrest Barry for Suzanne's murder. The federal judge said that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would expect an indictment coming down again at some point, hopefully soon. But
put your seatbelts on.
Yeah.
Put your seatbelts on. His defense team said the arrest affidavit made misleading statements, blah, 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 the standard stuff. So I've heard from a pretty reliable source that Barry's defense lawyer, he's out of money. But Barry's going to pick up another guy pro bono, and he's going to run with it if he gets arrested again. So now that there was probable cause to arrest him in the very first case, we have to ask ourselves, what now? And then, of course, our, favorite guy in Idaho wants to wear his suits, Brian Koberger. He wants to wear suits instead of a orange popsicle. He wants to look good for the jury as if they won't notice. So his defense, if you can believe this, filed a motion so that he wouldn't have to wear anything other than street clothing, not the orange jumpsuit for his trial.
That makes much of a difference in the case. I mean, you're in court all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, whether they see him in orange or a 3-piece or whatever, a double-breasted jacket, he's still accused of quadruple homicide, no matter what he's wearing.
Right. And the interesting thing is Bill Thompson hasn't pushed back at all on the defense, even though he shows up with haircut, fresh haircut, hair gel, and, suits and ties. That's going to make a huge difference. Not. And then Kaylee's parents are infuriated about this for obvious reasons. They say the defendant should not be allowed to wear anything other than his jail jumpsuit. However, the new judge, Stephen Hippler, has not yet ruled on this. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen?
for some reason, it always seems like these special requests by Koberger's defense, they seem to grant them. Um, I he'll probably be able to wear a suit, and it'll probably be paid for by taxpayers.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't agree with it because he's gotten a lot of, I don't have as much of a problem with this as just completely moving the trial and kind of putting the families that want to attend out, making things more difficult. But yeah, I think that they'll probably bend to this request too. And, I guess it does matter in front of jurors because, you dress up a little nicer, but ultimately he's sitting there and he's going to be tried for a quadruple homicide. And hopefully the evidence will stand for itself. Who knows exactly what's going to happen, but I think that they will grant him that.
So
I just found the link. It was from interview room, not from lab. So ignore my message.
Ignore.
Yeah.
Dr. Brucato in the house. Dr. Brucato's in the house. And if you're new to our channel and you do not know him, the link to his book is below. His bio is there. Dr. Gary Brucato has the largest mass data or mass murder data in the world. And he's not only brilliant, but he's written an amazing book called The New Evil. And you can get that through the link on Amazon. And we're gonna have a great discussion tonight. So, Gary, I was just bringing everybody up to speed on Barry Morphew. His civil trial was kicked loose. The judge dismissed it, and then the judge followed it up with the federal judge. By the way, said, "Hey, they had probable cause to arrest him in the beginning, even though the DA screwed up." And then the second one, of course, Brian was in a hearing, Brian Koberger, where he wants to wear suits, and his attorney filed a motion to argue that he should be wearing suits. So she's not missed a beat, not missed a beat. Tonight we're gonna dive into the indictment of Mr. Combs, Puff Daddy, aka P Daddy, aka Diddy, aka Poodoo, aka Love.
Love, yeah, that's my favorite one. Love,
yeah, right. AKA
Cuff Daddy.
Puff Daddy, yeah,
yeah. AKA Cuff Daddy, correct. And
so what's funny about that, Chris, is that those name changes after all these different incidents that he's had over the years. He went from Puff Daddy to P Diddy to Diddy. I think right now it stands as Diddy, I think, but people still refer to him as P Diddy. But there was that incident in the club, the shooting incident that involved his at the time girlfriend Jennifer Lopez, and yeah, he wanted to start fresh. He wanted a new feel, so he changed from Puffy or Puff Daddy to I think it was to Diddy, yeah, or Diddler, whatever you prefer.
Puffy.
Oh, this is going to be a great show.
Yeah,
Puffy.
I can feel it already.
The only thing about Cuff Daddy that bothers me is that I understand that it's a play on the idea of him being arrested. But the trouble is that when you realize that he posed as some kind of protective figure and then basically captured women, there's something about the idea of Cuff Daddy that takes on a very sinister double meaning. And then it isn't funny anymore because it's sort of like you understand, it sort of takes on the idea of enslavement of women. It depends on who the cuffs are on. If the cuffs are on him, well, yeah, then it's funny. But if the cuffs are on the women, then it's messed up.
Well, and the thing is, Dr. Gary, it's not even just women. He is accused of a lot of things involving, male sex workers as well. So, but yeah, I get what you're saying. He's we make light of stuff like he's a sinister human being. He's been this way for a long time.
Yes, he has. And so what we're going to do is a couple of things. I'm just going to throw it out here for a second. Do you think he is, well, first of all, what is a puff daddy?
Gary
just choked on his coffee.
I'm sorry. No, I actually have a cough tonight, but it was like, I don't know. It was something about the question.
It's just
what
a
is
dumb
a puff
name.
daddy?
Yeah, what is a puff daddy?
You know what? I don't know the origins behind his name. All I know is that he's had like 12 of them, and they're all relatively similar. I mean, we could refer to him as Sean Combs. They refer to him as Sean Puffy Combs in the media, like his middle name's Puffy. It's not, but yeah, he's been around a long time, causing a lot of havoc. He's behind a few unsolved murders that he's been implicated, not charged with, but I do think that at some point there's more charges coming, and I think that it wouldn't surprise me if that they find out or they charge him with the fact that there could have been underage people involved, because he's been known. There was an interview many years ago with Usher Raymond. He was a very famous singer. He actually performed at the Super Bowl, I think, last year, and where his mother actually signed, I believe, the parental rights over to him, to Diddy at the time, and it was called. He went there for quote unquote Puffy Flavor Camp. That was the name of it. I don't know exactly what it entailed. He didn't go into major detail, but he said that as a 13 or 14-year-old, I think he was 13, said that he saw things that a 13-year-old shouldn't see. They were trying to get him, accustomed to the lifestyle and things like that, which also, and then if you go by Usher was the one that signed Justin Bieber, who has also been implicated with Diddy, being around Diddy at a very young age. I don't have any details on exactly what, went on there, but he's the same thing went on with Usher and with Justin Bieber, which is pretty ironic.
Well, I had looked up why he was called Puff Daddy.
Okay.
I always thought that it was because of puffing marijuana or something like that, cigarettes or marijuana. But it's and somebody just referenced exactly what I had found, which is that when he was younger, he had a very bad temper, and when he would become upset, he had a tendency to make this very deep huffing, puffing kind of sound, and so his mother would playfully call him Puffy. And it's interesting to me as a shrink, the idea that he had a temper, would become overwhelmed with anger like that, to the point that it became his identity. But notice that it's a mocking name. It's like a woman figure saying to him, like, oh, you big baby, you're getting overwhelmed, getting all puffy, you big loser, that kind of thing.
Yeah, my grandma, she'd go, don't get huffy. I mean, I don't know if you've heard that one. The puffy thing, I'd heard something like that, but I didn't know it came from his mother. I knew that it was from him. Right. I knew that he was a tantrum thrower, though.
But I think it's psychologically significant.
Yeah.
Because, it implies somebody that might have taken it, that he was out of control, that was made to feel ashamed for being out of control, because control is going to figure so heavily into the story of what these things are about, right? It puts him right into the power, the driver's seat. Now, as somebody that is both huffy and puffy, I will tell you that, I don't know if I'd be offended by somebody calling me huffy or puffy.
I've gotten mad in the past. Yeah, absolutely. But
You got to learn to beat it.
I
Not
don't
just to hurt you.
really have a temper. I mean, I'm kind of a mellow guy. I just get irritated and I just don't say anything. I
Yeah,
just
that's kind of me too. I kind of just go
I
the
just
opposite direction.
keep moving.
Right. But the point
Mhm.
I'm trying to make is that we all have faults and we work to beat them. We don't
Oh,
blame
sure.
on the world. You don't say like, you're making me feel insecure about myself because you're pointing out that I have a temper. That kind of thing. You just say, you know what, you're right, I'll work on it. It's important to beat your flaw. That's real control. Right?
Yeah.
Real control is controlling you, not going out and taking control of other people to compensate for your weaknesses.
Yeah. No, I get, I don't know. I'm kind of a mellow guy, but back in the day on the street, I mean, I was just kind of, cruising constantly. But that was one of the reasons they sent me into Vice because, from 84 to 86, which is going to be great because I can talk about the indictment here because all the, the girls on the street, we just got along great. They were always like, you're a good listener. And 2:00 in the morning when they got thrown out of a car or something, it's like, I want to talk to Detective McDonough. And then I'd show up and I got to tell you about this. I got to tell you about that. And I just listened, and then it would be like, when are you going to get off the street? How can I help you? Let's do it. Let's move.
Right. Well,
So,
but I'm just saying, I wanted to talk about it because I think it's important to understand that the essence of this person, I think, is a problem with anger and control. And I wanted to kind of put it out there that, that's a problem men have in our culture generally. And it can be very toxic if it's not controlled. If you think that you're justified because you've been such a man, that you've gotten rich and powerful, that it entitles you to do every single libidinal thing that shoots up your spinal cord. I just don't, I think that puts us in a very dangerous place. So I just wanted to kind of pause a minute and talk about this idea that it's pretty normal for men to have temper issues and control issues, but you're supposed to control them in yourself. And that point, I think, is going to get right to the essence of a lot of what we're going to talk about with this guy, because we're not saying that he's a lunatic. This is his personality. So where does that come from? All right.
well,
So we'll talk about him a little. Anyway, jumping right in.
go ahead, Josh. Did you have a thought?
No, I was just gonna give a little background on
Go.
who he is and how he got to where he was. He was actually an intern. He dropped it. He's actually an intelligent when it comes to, he went to Howard, he dropped out of Howard. He became an intern at Uptown Records in the early 90s. He found some very talented musicians. Ultimately, he was fired from Uptown Records. Then he started a record label called Bad Boy Records, which is still to this day. I mean, that's the RICO Act is for that organization. And I mean, Bad Boy Records, the irony of that name it doesn't escape me. I'll tell you that. But he founded some of the biggest names in hip hop, R&B, Christopher Wallace, which is Biggie Smalls, Mary J. Blige, Mobb Deep, there's Mace. There was a lot of people that helped him build this music empire. And he got into clothing, reality television. And I mean, as far as moguls go, he was kind of the top mogul. And then he started having issues with another record label across the United States called Death Row, which was founded by a man named Suge Knight, who's in prison as well. So both of these CEOs and creators of these record labels are both sitting in prison or jails right now, which is, interesting as well. And there was just significant mudslinging And basically what you're doing is the people that they had around them, they were kind of the top, the top bosses who had what you would call shooters, hitters, that would go out and kind of do their dirty work for them. And it's been that way for a long time. The people that, or the man that is sitting in jail right now for the murder of Tupac, Keefe D is his name, and I believe his associate was Orlando. I think it was Orlando Johnson, but he's dead, so he can't be tried, for that murder as well. Claims that Tupac, or that Diddy, paid him $1 million because they were getting in the way of business to kill Suge Knight and to kill Tupac Shakur, which was the biggest hip hop name in hip hop. And
okay, so hold that thought just for a second. Okay. You weren't ready for this, but
Orlando.
That's
right.
Tupac Shakur is a music legend. And for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step.
Rapper Tupac Shakur, the man accused of his murder, is now claiming that Sean Diddy Combs once ordered a hit on the rap icon.
What do you think of that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the thought for a long time. There was an incident before his death where where Tupac was invited to a recording session at Bad Boy Records. He as he got into an elevator, or he was getting off an elevator or onto an elevator, he was stuck up and robbed and shot multiple times. And as he was laying there, he saw Biggie, Christopher Wallace, and Sean Puffy Combs. And he swore that he was set up by them. It turns out that maybe he wasn't, but he never trusted them again. And that's really when the Tupac, who had a huge following on the East Coast and West Coast, really went after him in the public and was affecting his bottom line. So this guy, Keefe D, says that Puffy paid him $1 million to take out the CEO of Death Row Records and Tupac, which was Suge Knight, who, by the way, gave an interview today with Chris Cuomo.
Oh, amazing. So let check this out. Listen to this other part.
In a recent court filing, a 2009 interview between police and Dwayne Keefe D. Davis is making headlines yet again, as Davis is claiming that Diddy told him he would give anything for that dude's head, in reference to both Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur. Now, according to Davis, the beef stemmed from the continuous taunting of Combs by the iconic rapper. Now, this is a proffer done with former LAPD detective Greg Kading, and in that, Davis made a similar claim about Diddy's disdain for Tupac and Suge.
Okay, so just what you said, and just so everybody understands, what happened was they put an LAPD detective with him. They made a deal, said, whatever you say to us will not be used against you. And then they recorded the conversation, just like Josh said, and here it was.
So it's Pharrell, you, Puffy, Zip, and a bunch of Southsiders. And what Puffy makes kind of an announcement?
Yeah, that was stupid as hell too,
What did you actually hear? What was the words, the best you can remember, what he says?
He said he didn't give us anything for no dudes here,
Give us 5 names of people who would say, yeah, we heard Puffy say that. You don't have to come from, they don't.
Al, Corey, Wynn, Third Rock, all of them was tell you.
Tupac Shakur.
Okay, so there you have it. Just what Josh was talking about. It sounded like it was legit. And LAPD, and now out there. And that's going to be really interesting as we go over the indictment tonight, and we talk about the psychological aspects behind this, as well as, of course, the law here. But there are, man, oh man, I'll tell you, there are so many people caught up in this. I think it's going to be bigger than Epstein. What say you guys?
Dr. Gary.
Well, I mean, a person doesn't hone these methods if they're not doing something over and over and over again. I mean, I think that, even like the IV drips and things like that. I mean, it's very unusual, for example, to hear about men who have people participating in a kind of sexual enslavement situation, multiple people helping, that kind of thing, and having people enslaved. There aren't many cases of that. Think, for example, of David Parker Ray, who had a $100,000 soundproofed torture chamber inside a trailer in New Mexico. He had medical equipment there to revive people that died during the process of being assaulted repetitively. He even had paddles to jolt them back, only to torture them further. This idea of you wouldn't have medical equipment and stuff like that unless your goal was that you had honed a kind of a system that worked in a very methodical way to be used over and over and over and over again and perfected. And Chris, it takes years to do that, years. And so I think we're going to discover that this went on without impunity for a very long time, that it was like one of the big, best kept secrets, in certain circles, that kind of thing. And that some people, some probably prominent people, may have even been aware. Things like that. I mean, I don't know how you would hide something like this forever.
It's going to be really, really interesting. Let me, Josh, go ahead if you got a comment.
What's weird about this is that, when this stuff that went down with Epstein wasn't a household name, when these things were going on. Now he was amongst, I guess you would say, the politicians and elite and things like that. He ran in those circles, but people didn't really know who Jeffrey Epstein was until this stuff started to trickle out. My grandmother knows who Puff Daddy is. Okay. Been around a long time. He has politically influenced, people. There are allegations that there are politicians that are involved in this, keeping it hush, involved in the parties, high celebrities. After Diddy got rid of the competition, he became, it's almost like, when Whitey Bulger took the other, was it the Angelos out, and then he ran Southie. Sort of how it became for Diddy, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, where he became the mogul. Now his music, he's a rapper, but he's not really known for his musical talents. He's known for signing musicians, producing their albums, marketing them. And so once he got rid of the competition, you have people like Ashton Kutcher, who've been friends with him for a long time, LeBron James, that just major athletes, politicians, actors, actresses, J-Lo, so yeah, this is going to go quite, probably pretty high.
What's your feeling though? Do you think that all these people that sold their soul to this guy and to the devil, that they should fall?
I think that some of them definitely should. I definitely have a problem with, him taking custody of 12, 13-year-old superstars and putting them in their home, and them blowing up to be some of the biggest artists in the world. I don't think any of that is a coincidence. The allegations are there. I believe charges will be added. Remember, and we'll hear about it in this indictment as well. He blew up somebody's car trying to silence them. I mean, there's no limit to what this guy will do. and the way that he has treated people. But I do think that the people in his organization that helped facilitate it, that knew about it, I mean, if there are politicians that are on these tapes that they're talking about, it is going to be just an absolute mess. And RICO trials, Chris, you know this, they take a long time.
Yep. And so let's go to count one for Mr. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, PD, or Love. I'm going to use my
It's too much.
announcer voice. I'm teasing. The grand jury says, count one, racketeering. For decades, Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Love, the defendant abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on employees, resources, and influences of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and an obstruction of justice. Man, and that's only paragraph 1. Paragraph 1. What do you think?
I mean, those list of allegations just from the first paragraph are damning. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to be. I mean, this seems to be too that this has just kind of sort of come out in the last couple of years, you know.
You know, number 2 says the same stuff. Love, the defendant, operates his business headquartered at various times, Gary, in Manhattan and Los Angeles. $100 says he's got an office in your building and you just don't know it.
Probably owns the building.
Gary's laughing. No. It won't surprise me. I mean,
he's a billionaire, Chris. A billionaire.
Oh, yeah, the guy's got he's there. He's there, no question about it. Headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles, under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, that's what you were talking about, Bad Boy Records, Comb Enterprises, and Comb Global, collectively the Comb Businesses Corporations. Entities in the Comb business include, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business. He had his own alcohol? I didn't know
Ciroc.
that.
Yeah, Ciroc Boys is what it was called. Ciroc, yeah.
What was it called?
It's called Ciroc. It's a very popular vodka.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't called like, you know, Diddy or anything like that. You know,
Ciroc.
Yeah. A marketing agency, a television network, and media company. What television network did he own?
I don't know which one he owned. I know that he was with MTV, BET, but I don't know the one that he owned. I don't know.
It should. Maui says the alcohol should be 1,000 bottles of baby oil. That should be the name of the product. I'm with you there. Okay, so now we go to paragraph 3.
Now it's Combs over.
Combs over. The defendant engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals. The abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of SA with male commercial SA workers. At times, Combs and others acting at his directions made arrangements for women and commercial SA workers to fly to locations. Combs ensured participation from the women, but among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. So he's an extortionist.
Yeah, and by the way, and people in the chat are right. The name of his channel was called Revolt.
The what?
Revolt. He owned the channel Revolt. That was his channel that he owned. I think it was I think it was with Verizon as well. You know, I mean, he had major businesses that turned huge profits.
So, Dr. Gary,
Mm-hmm.
you and Michael studied all these crazy people for years and years and years. This guy kind of fits in somewhere in your book. He's got to.
Right.
Where's he fitting from what you're seeing just in this indictment? And I got to be honest with you, his ex Cassie, she's like a superhero in my book.
Yeah.
Because she took it, you know, she's still moving forward and pushing him. I think her life's in jeopardy personally, but you know, she's the one that got beaten up in the hotel and showed the world the other side of this guy. Gary, what say you?
Well, you know, one of the things I was thinking about with regard to this case is that it's a shame Michael passed away, you know, almost a year ago, because there's so many of these cases coming out that he and I would have really enjoyed dissecting from an intellectual perspective. And this particular guy, if he is guilty, would fall into a very rare category in the scale. There is a category 19, that is for people that are not known to have killed. They're not known to have been homicidal, and that can change with some of these guys. He's not known to have been homicidal, but who enjoy, for whatever sadistic reason, creating a situation in which a person is enslaved or subjugated or repetitively abused or manipulated or threatened or whatever, for totally selfish psychological control needs. And it goes so beyond, I mean, it's like just falls short. Like if the person were actually torturing a person in a medieval way and killing them, would be the only thing that goes beyond it in the scale, right? So this is a category where you get this very, very rare place where you get these kind of offenders that might keep a sex slave or have a whole system of them or run a kind of a cult where you're torturing people psychologically or brainwashing them or manipulating them, whatever. And it tells you something about what might be going on with this guy, but it's very hard to be at that place in the scale. Now, look, I'm waiting for someone to do an assessment of him and tell us, but it's very hard to be in that place of the scale without having basically psychopathic, sadistic personality structure. Because the center of it is a person who is operating under a sense of, desiring to hurt people, to assert control over them, and for amusement, and thinking of them totally transactionally as objects and so forth. And when you think about doing that repetitively and it coming from a person's personality and their fantasy life, you have to start imagining a person who, from a very young age, when feeling insecure or out of control, would sit back and kind of fantasize, oh, one day, what I'd love to do? I'd love to have a place where I could bring people and just do whatever I wanted to them and drug them and whatever. You don't think of that stuff older. You think about it for years and years and years, and then you enact it. And Chris, how those kind of fantasies start. It starts with some feeling out of control or wounded or insecure, and then everything about you is a compensation against it. Obviously, this guy, he got famous, he got rich, and those were compensations, but it wasn't enough to deal with that core need to kind of punish that was inside of him. And, this is the kind of person who wouldn't be satisfied with a normal sexual relationship, for example, without needing to get into some stuff that went beyond that. The whole thing smacks of a person who is a control-obsessed, entitled, sadistic person who felt that the law didn't apply to him and in fact didn't even seem afraid that he was going to get in trouble. A lot of people probably knew about this, right? I mean, a lot of it was just kind of entitlement and arrogance. So I think if it comes from his personality, then this must have been going on for years and years and years and years and years, over and over again, until it got perfected. He even had supplies stashed in the house for the fulfillment of fantasy, right?
Yeah. Josh,
Baby
what do you
oil, medical equipment, whatever. I mean, this was just a matter of routine. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, look, he's been accused of sexual assault, I would think four or five times over the years.
But that would be countless. It's probably countless in reality.
Yeah, but
right?
these are the ones that are on record. That I mean, he in like 90, I think 91, somebody that he took on a date accused him of sexual assault back then. As I believe as late as this year, music producer, I don't know who has accused him of that sexual assault. And yeah, this is something that yes, as his resources grew, as his wealth grew, he kind of expanded, his, I mean, he got in trouble for not in trouble, but one of his chefs at his house accused him of sexual assault. And it doesn't seem to discriminate really between men and women when it comes to assault. I mean, he is very inappropriate. There's a montage of just things out there that you can go and see him just being inappropriate with people. He makes people uncomfortable because of his power, his what he can do for people in the industry. He certainly could. Now he can't, but he made stars. He made absolute stars out of people. But there was a TV show that he had. It was called Making the Band, and it was like a bunch of rappers, singers that were trying to form a 5-man band. It was on MTV years ago. And you could just even see the way he treated them. It was horrible. He also had a group called, I believe, is Danity Kane. It was another season of Making the Band. Those women do not have nice things to say about him as well. So
the point here in 2016 where he's caught running down the hallway with his bathrobe on, grabs her as she's getting towards the elevator, trying to get on the elevator, and then he just beats the tar out of her, pulls her down, kicks her while she's down. That's the kind of guy that you're not going to be able to help him. He's do not pass go or collect $200. He's pass. So
right.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Chris, right before that, right in the 2016 incident in the hallway, right before that, he was arrested for assaulting his son's football coach at UCLA with kettlebells because he wasn't getting enough playing time. Ultimately, the charges were dropped. But if you know what a kettlebell is, I mean, that's a deadly weapon. He was swinging in the gym. He was swinging these kettlebells at his son's football coach. He's got a history of violence and being a sexual deviant.
So he's beating people with kettlebells?
Yes.
Boy, that gives a new meaning for more cowbell, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Do you think, Chris, that it would be surprising, given the sexual deviance and the long-standing personality issues and anger issues, would you be surprised if it ever turned out that he was involved in some way in homicide?
Oh, heck no. No, and the fact that it's an East Coast, West Coast Crip thing, that's a no-brainer.
Well, I think now that people have been arrested or that are going to, because if you read about it, it seems like a lot of people are ready to cooperate with the investigators because right now they have the head of the snake who they're going after. And it would not surprise me at all if they start turning over that kind of evidence. And ultimately, I think that he will be charged for the death of Tupac as well. I think he'll be indicted on that as well. And it's also people should know this as well. The reason that these charges are filed now is because over the last 2 years, there have been many civil lawsuits filed against P. Diddy for all sorts of malfeasance, and it just
stop the presses. Stop the presses. Everybody in chat, help Dr. Brucato come to an understanding of what is a cowbell.
I'm picturing a literal cowbell.
Oh.
Yeah, but no, it's a kettlebell.
Oh, okay. But I'm picturing literally like a cow, a cow walking around.
Hit him with a cowbell.
Yeah, so you're talking about a piece of sports equipment.
Yeah. We got to bring you into the hood.
Yeah, you got to come. You got to come visit.
You got to hang out with the homies.
Yeah,
sure. We got to get you out of Manhattan and
sheltered existence.
Off on Century Boulevard. See what happens.
Just keep me away from the dumbbells.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, Chris, the kettlebell is what he assaulted him with. Chris was referring to, remember the I Need More Cowbell with Will Ferrell? Yeah, and Christopher Walken. He didn't hit him with that. All right. Well, you guys are talking. Let's get into that. Well, I'm going to look that up. Josh, if you can, more cowbell. We need more cowbell. Anyway, this is a commercial.
I have a lot of questions, okay?
No, you're cool. You're good. You're good.
I love it.
You're cool. It's all good, Holmes.
Yeah.
If you told me that I'd be on a show talking about Puff Daddy, even a couple of weeks ago, I would have checked both legs to see which one you were pulling. I mean, it's not somebody that ever was on my radar as interesting in any way. But hey, listen, well, he's interesting now.
He's about to get even more interesting.
But I mean, yeah. So
because you guys kind of. I'm not saying he's a New Yorker. I mean, you've had to hear about him for years.
There's a couple of New Yorkers I've heard about for years. I have no interest in. But anyway, on that point,
so he had his entourage and his homies around him, and it looked like they were doing his dirty work for him at his direction. And that's in line 5. Line 6 talks about his organization. It talks about the trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of 647B, which is the big P word here. It's California Penal Code. And then coercion and enticement to engage in 647B, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. And then they hit him with US 18 because he's the leader. That's section 1961-4, that a group of individuals, basically this is RICO.
Wow.
The Comb enterprise consistent of, love and all of his businesses. So what they're saying here, what the federal indictment is saying is this guy ran everything through his organization, i.e. money came back through, money came out, and everything is tied to the leader, and that's him.
So Chris, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that it's being approached almost like when you prosecute a mob boss.
It is. Yes, 100%.
So where are all the underlings in the system?
Well, now they're cooperating.
Yeah, and I think, Josh, what do you think? What do you guys think? Do you think people are going to be either running for the hills, or they're going to run to their attorneys and say, let's get in there before it gets too late? Because I think some of these parties, and we're going to get into that here in a second, because that's where the indictment's going. What do you think, Josh?
Oh, I think that they're keeping a lot of them secret. One of the reasons that he was denied bail wasn't just because he was a flight risk, but that he was accused of threatening witnesses. And, the federal government likes their witnesses. So, you probably won't see a list of people that are going to testify for some time, probably closer to trial, that they're going to all cut deals first. So right now they have who they're looking for. Now, if it goes higher than that, that's going to come from Diddy himself. And then it'll come from the people below. It's like it's a pyramid basically. And they're going to whittle it down, but you won't see names of famous people involved, or, high profile politicians or anything like that for some time until they get closer to trial, probably.
Interesting.
What do you think, Gary?
Well, I'm disturbed because if it is that kind of a system, there's probably been very high, powerful people protecting, this from exposure for a long time. I mean, you know how that goes. And then when it comes out, you have to wonder who got pissed off, who finally said, I'm bringing this whole thing down. I mean, because this went on obviously with impunity for a long time. And,
well, it really was because of the Cassie tape, which kind of started, which just came out about a year ago. But people had been filing lawsuits against Diddy for harassment, sexual harassment, assault. And I think it got to about 10, and they had all this evidence, all this testimony, and they go, you know what, we need to look into that, because all of these lawsuits that were filed against him were by different people, all said similar things. They spoke of these parties, they spoke of these videotapes, they spoke of just deviant behavior. And then eventually, you had the Southern District of New York, the prosecutors going, there's something here. And so they took it to a judge and they said, we need to go check out what's going on. There are 10 civil lawsuits here, all claiming almost exactly the same thing, that they were all treated exactly the same way.
Right.
And that's when 7 months ago, they went and raided his home. And as soon as they did that, Homeland Security and the FBI doesn't go search your home unless they have plans for you. And every home that he had, even his jet, everything was raided. Matter of fact, he was supposed to be arrested. I believe it was on either, I think, a Tuesday, and they went in the day before. He was supposed to turn himself in. He wanted to turn himself in. They said no. They went and got him the day before because they didn't want him destroying whatever was in that room. And it's alleged that there was drugs and alcohol in there as well.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because all across history, if you think, for example, of somebody like Emperor Caligula or Nero or anything, all across history, there's been this thing where when certain people get drunk with power, they start to feel entitled to do things that are very above the law and that have every kind of sexual perversion involved, because they're kind of bored. They've done everything. They've got all the money in the world. They can go anywhere they want. And then it's just kind of like an amusement at the expense of other people. And you start thinking about the ancient Romans and the things they would do when they would get bored at parties, let's all sleep with each other's wives, let's have an orgy, let's have it's this kind of thing where I think, Chris, you would agree, it's a kind of moral corruption that comes from feeling entitled because you've achieved everything. And you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can. And I've always been like you and probably everybody else listening to all this stuff. This guy was just pure evil in terms of his self-control. I mean, the guy had no self-control. It's obvious. And when he did have control, he used his influence of that evil over other people to make them do and say and act certain ways. I don't understand, Gary, is the feeling of I have to be famous more, is it so strong that it just overtakes you? And before you answer that, the only reason I'm asking that question is because Buddy wants to know.
Oh. Well, I'll answer it for Buddy.
Down the hallway.
As a dog lover, I'll answer that for Buddy. But he is pretty cute, by the way. Is he purebred, by the way, Buddy?
Yes, he is. And he's not only purebred, he was trained by the SEALs teams.
Oh. Is he a Jack Russell Terrier?
Yes, he is.
Adorable. I love him.
He is a force to be reckoned with. But go ahead and answer the question.
Well, I think that fame for a person like this is just another expression of the feeling of being over other people. Whether it's fame, money, power, sexual degradation, whatever. The point is, it's an expression of I'm above you, I have control, I'm more powerful than you, you have to like me now. And I think that name, that Puff Daddy name, knowing that where it comes from, that idea of huffing and puffing as a kid because he had a temper, it takes on a really disturbing double meaning. I mean, well, not even double, it takes on a revealing quality. I mean, if somebody came into psychoanalysis and told me that as a little kid they were called, puffy because they had a temper, that would be extremely valuable information, right? Because those are your formative years. And it just kind of sounds like there is a deep truth to the idea that this guy was asserting and huffing and puffing his entire life. Like the wolf that's trying to knock down the different houses that the pigs build, puffing and puffing and blowing the house in, that kind of thing. And I just think that temper sounds like it could have gone pretty haywire if somebody insulted his ego. And who knows? I mean, maybe it could have even gone further than we have any idea right now. I mean, this isn't somebody who, as I understand it, was even able to hit a female partner, right? Like beat women.
Yeah, he not only hit her, he's been reported of doing it hundreds of times.
But he could bring himself to do that. I mean, that's what I mean. He was able to do. That's how low his self-control was.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's that person's capable of anything, Chris.
Yeah, and that's where I think as we go on here into the sorry about the background noise, I got a truck going by, into the indictment. The purpose of the Combs enterprise includes the following. Now, this is going to be his personality right from the get-go. Operating a global business in media, entertainment, lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, apparel line, alcoholic spirits, blah, blah, blah. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, the defendant. Enrich members of the associates of the enterprise, including its leader. Preserving, protecting, and enhancing the power of Combs enterprise, including the power of its leader, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and SA. This is how he controlled everything. So that's
the key.
That's the key. And so he would fulfill his desires, particularly those related to his SA. This is his people, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial SA workers, 647Bs. They would enabling Combs and other members and associates of Combs Enterprises to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including SV, ST, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, or 647B, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distributions. This guy is a crime family. He is a crime family disguised as a producer / whatever he is. What say you, Josh?
Yeah, and he's got adult children that have been accused of certain things too. It'll be very interesting to see if they're kind of indicted in this situation. I read the other day that they've already met with over 50 witnesses and victims. And like I said, part of the reason that there's no bail is because they want more people to come forward. They want him in jail because of his reach and his power. And he has already tried to obstruct this investigation. It's rumored, it was said by, I believe, the district attorney that he was harassing a potential witness, called them over 50 times in the days leading up to his arrest. So yeah, this is nothing more than it's turned. I don't know what it was like in the early years, but he has gotten so big that he's been able to buy people off. He's been able to silence people. And yeah, it's nothing more than a very successful gang, really.
Gary, learned behavior?
Well, I think that that's an interesting question. I mean, I think that people who are insecure, who want to try to make themselves feel that they're more powerful than other people, will often ally themselves with other strong people in gangs or groups of bullies, or they get together so that they draw strength from each other. But the one with the most sadistic, controlling personality will likely wind up the head of the whole lot. Sometimes they're the most unlikely person to be pulling all the strings, but they'll do it. As far as learned, I don't know, but I have no doubt that the roots of this are going to go all the way back. A person doesn't develop this kind of misanthropic attitude, misogyny, anger issues, so forth, out of nowhere. There's something to the story. I think it's interesting that he's sharing a cell with Sam Bankman-Fried, the fraudster, the crypto fraudster. I'd love to be a fly on the wall listening to what those two are talking about in the cell. There's something interesting about when they put two people together that are like, that are both like kind of colossuses of darkness, like, and they're in the same cell together. Like, what are they talking? It's like when Ted Bundy. Yeah. Well, I guess I could just imagine each of them thinking that the other one was kind of a genius of manipulating other people or control or whatever. It must be very interesting to have them together. It's like Noah's Ark. They put the pair together. And I mean, obviously they have different expressions, but in their essences, they're both control freaks who.
So you got a pair of snakes in the same cell.
It's like when Eric Menendez was cell neighbors with OJ.
Well, I'm personally very fascinated by that, and that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure that there were a lot of people who shared a cell, for example, with Bundy, that were themselves infamous offenders, and authorities got some information from them because Bundy was a boaster. So he would, and I always think about that, about how if you've got two people awaiting a trial, for example, now they've already convicted.
Where are you hearing that he's sharing a cell by chance?
I saw it on the news. Yeah.
Because I thought he was in the SHU unit, the special housing unit but
yeah,
they could have moved him. Maybe for court. They probably moved him for his court hearing and put him in with that guy.
Yeah, let's see.
Because I know he was, the last I heard, they had him locked up in solitary confinement.
No, it does. It says in the news as of 1 day ago, they're together in a dormitory style space in prison in the same.
It's for high profile people.
Yeah. So they have them together, but if one of them wasn't convicted, Bankman-Fried was convicted. If one of them wasn't, I could see it being a good technique to try to get one to boast to the other, and they could say, look, maybe your own sentence could be reduced if you cooperate with being a witness against your cellmate who is giving some really bad information. Remember, Chris, when something similar happened with Susan Atkins, who was the first person to really break open what was going on with the cult leader, Charles Manson, was that everybody was instructed by Charlie to keep their mouths shut, but Susan boasted in jail. And then the cellmate dropped the dime, so to speak, and that's how they started to figure out what was really going on, because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. So it's kind of like, you know what I'm saying? It's interesting to think about. Can you picture this guy keeping his mouth shut in jail? I could picture him boasting and having to control the cellmate.
No, he's got a puff.
He's got a puff.
He's already puffing about the conditions of the jail. I mean, he wants out of there.
Yeah.
Of course he wants out there.
They got him in the SHU unit. And I don't know if you guys, have you ever been to a SHU unit ever? I'll tell you. I was up in Pelican Bay one time. I had to go up and interview a guy. And I've been to, the Metropolitan.
Manson was there. Manson was there, I think. Pelican Bay. Manson was on Pelican Bay once, I think.
Maybe at one point, yeah, they moved him up there, and let me tell you that is quite an experience.
Yeah, I've been to Pelican Bay, but I haven't been to the shoe unit of it.
It's inside the middle of the prison.
Yeah, he was there, Chris. I just looked.
Yep. Okay. So he was. I mean, he was in the middle in the shoe, and it's got catwalks on the top, and every prisoner is locked up for 23 of 24 hours. They're individual cells. And anyway, it's kind of like 200 square feet, maybe. And long story short, you have to sign no hostage policies when you go into the building because they will not come get you. If the prisoners got hold of you, you are on your own.
Yeah, and the prisoners know that too.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
You can't wear jeans. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole clothing list that you can't wear. Anyway, it was kind of an interesting situation, but my partner and I went up there years ago, Danny Aarons, and we went to interview a guy named Solano Beltran. He's probably still in there, but he was a bad dude. But let's get back to the Combs enterprise here. It says their business was to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of romantic relationships. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended SA with male commercial SA workers that Combs referred to, among other things, freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced SA performances that Combs arranged, directed, and often electronically recorded.
So it's about fantasy.
Yeah, he's a voyeur. He's a voyeur, fantasy. I knew you would like this part, Gary. That's why.
Well, it gets right into our, the kind of stuff we deal with these offenders. It's really, really great.
So in arranging these freak-offs, Combs would, with the assistance of members and associates of his enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial SA workers across state lines and internationally. This is why it's a federal case right here. That's the whole reason right there, because he was bringing people across state lines and federally across the world.
Which is a form of sex trafficking.
Yes, and that's why it's international. Right. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasting multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial SA workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. This guy's like into mind control too. And he was doing that through all of these doggone drugs. He's a sadist. This guy is evil.
Manson did it too. He used drugs to destroy the egos of victims, where the idea was that their compliance would increase if they were bonked out. He would claim he was doing it to free their ego and all this whatever, but it was a controlled mechanism. So is the idea that he was getting people to engage in drugs willingly, or he was forcing them to
them?
Oh, well, that's
because after the freak-offs, the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from physical exertion and drug use. Man, this is heavy. Members of the enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated these freak-offs, among other things, booking hotel rooms, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with supplies, including controlled substance, baby oil. This guy's a sick puppy. They had over 1,000 bottles of baby oil in his house. I mean, and his staff is like acting as a concierge, for this guy. Josh, what's coming to your mind when you're reading this stuff?
Yeah, well, it just kind of shows you that he's everything that is being done when it comes to these indictments is for his perverse pleasure. It's to please him. And this is something that, when you get kind of exposed to this stuff, the 1,000 bottles of baby oil, lube, and you would think that somebody like him, who has everything in the world that he could want, like Dr. Gary said, you reach these plateaus, and it's just not enough for people like him.
Well, and his staff is going in there after the events and cleaning the hotel rooms, arranging for them to travel back to wherever they came from. There are going to be a lot more people falling here. Not only his staff, but there's going to be a lot of people falling, and we're going to hear it. It won't be like the tree in the forest. This one's going to be loud unless somebody gets hold of him and does an Epstein. But anyway, we'll see.
Right.
He subjected his victims to physical, emotional, verbal abuse during, he maintained controls, among other things, through physical violence, promises of career opportunities or blackmail, granting and threatening to withhold financial support. You don't do this, you ain't getting paid. And by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substance. Did he with Bieber, did he buy him a car and a house?
Yeah, he had offered, or he had given him, I believe it was a Lamborghini. He wasn't able to drive at the time, but yeah, that's what he did. A lot of people too. And by the way, I want to say this, there's a man named Curtis Jackson, who most people know him by 50 Cent. He's a rapper. He's also a mogul. He's been blowing the whistle on Diddy for some time. And there was an incident at a wedding years ago where Puffy or Diddy or whatever went up to 50 Cent and told him, "Hey, let me take you shopping. We should go shopping. I'll pay for everything." And that's kind of his motive, to try and get in with people. And matter of fact, it almost turned violent because, 50 Cent basically told him, "Get out of my face. Like, I don't do those kinds of things. I know about you." But that's what he does.
I only have 50 cents.
If he's a mogul, don't you think maybe they should inflate his name? Maybe he's got to get a little above 50 cents. I
think they call him Curtis Jackson now, but
maybe like a buck. He's a buck at this point.
Well, he's producing. Matter of fact, he's producing a Netflix series about this, and he's giving the profits to the victims.
Oh,
good for him.
Yeah.
I remember I read in the paper that I think it was the lawyer for Puff Daddy. They were talking about the baby oil and why there'd be so much of it, and he said something like, he buys in bulk. The lawyer said something like, go to a Costco and look at the things people walk out with, and you'll see people buy in bulk.
Yeah, I'll take a pallet of baby oil, please.
Right. I'm pretty sure that was the lawyer that said it. But can you imagine, why anybody would need that in bulk?
Anyway, unbelievable. Yeah, no, good point, Gary. Members of his enterprise and security personnel at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried and brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others. So he's pointing guns at people, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse. You tell anybody about this, you're gonzo.
Yeah.
March 2024, searches of his residence in Miami, Los Angeles, and Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles. Law enforcement seized firearms, ammunitions, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine, meaning no serial numbers. They were scraped off. The enterprise controlled over victims by following his direction regarding financial payments, advancing of suppressing the victim's career opportunities. You'll never work in this town, and acquiring the controlled substance used to keep his victims compliant. Members and associates of this enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence towards victims or victims' injuries caused by him without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting him in monitoring, preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or his residence. So basically, they held him hostage, which would be kidnapping. These associates included incidences in which the victim were required to remain in hiding, sometime for several days at a time, to recover from injuries inflicted without being publicly observed. Members and associates of Combs' enterprise also assisted him in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee from his abuse. When employees witness to his abuse or other threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members of associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputation harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included kidnapping and arson. You mentioned something earlier about burning something up, Josh. What was that about?
Yeah, but he's accused of blowing somebody's car up. I don't know the exact details. Dr. Gary, do you remember?
I remember reading something about that, but I never knew the details. I could find it, I'm sure, but I don't.
No, I think it's in this indictment, I believe.
Let's see. Let's keep going. Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, and choked and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negativity, publicly or legally, or law enforcement actions against him, including in or about late 23, followed by public allegations of his crimes, Combs and members of his associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members of the, okay, you know what this tells me? Just reading that real fast. They had a wire on him. They had a wire because they were listening to his phone calls right there. It's kind of subtle, but that's exactly what this is saying. On phone calls, Combs and other members of the associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with false narratives of events in an effort to conceal his crimes. He caused these calls to be recorded on 2 occasions, so they knew they were being recorded. They knew that he was recording as well as them recording. So here's the racketeering conspiracy. It basically tells everybody that everything above is chargeable under RICO, including the following California PC 207, which is kidnapping, PC 21, which is an attempt, 664, California PQ 31, aiding and abetting, and 182, which is a conspiracy. Multiple acts involving arsons. So there are multiple things that he's burnt down.
Yeah, and I have the details on that now. There was a recording artist named Kid Cudi who has been around for some time. I believe he was possibly interested in Cassie or something, but what happened was he apparently had threatened to blow up Kid Cudi's convertible, and it ended up firebombing it is what he called it, and they ended up cutting whoever was responsible for this, and they believe that it was Diddy, cut the top of his drop top, soft top, or whatever it is, and set his car on fire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if he wets the bed, then he's got the homicidal triad, right, Gary? He's
Well,
burning.
there's a lot of problems with that triad, but
No, I know, but the three ingredients, right?
you mean the bedwetting and the fire setting and the
Cruelty to animals.
yeah. Well, I saw a meta-analysis of that showed that it works if you have two of them, but one of them alone is a. But arsonists are a very interesting breed. I mean, they're far more likely than other offenders to have authentic mental illness. They're far more likely to be suicidal, which is interesting. They're more likely to have detached, odd personalities, things like that. And he doesn't fit much of the profile of somebody like that. He looks more like somebody that might do it just as a really mean, aggressive thing to do, as an explosion of rage, or to assert control. Because he himself is kind of like a fire that, consumes things. He's like that kind of guy. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because a lot of people are saying, like he looks so much different, and in his booking photo and all that stuff. And if you notice, like in most photos of him, he's wearing like minks. He's wearing $2,000 sunglasses, big diamond earrings. I'm sure he uses top of the line face cream, stuff like that. And I take a bit of glee in knowing that he goes from living in this lap of luxury forever. Everybody's at his beck and call. He wants a sandwich. He goes and tells his chef to make him a sandwich. He's drinking. He wants to go to the club. He tells, let's take my Phantom or whatever it is. I mean, the guy's literally sitting in a crappy jail being fed crap food. And what kind of a shock that must be to the system. I mean, this guy, like I said, is a billionaire, and he's reduced to nothing but an inmate.
Yeah, he reminds me, for those in the audience will know what I'm referring to. He reminds me of the 8th chapter of Matthew, verse 36 in the Bible, that says, "For what does it profit a man to gain the entire world and lose his immortal soul?" Well, doesn't he embody that?
Yes. Yeah, but I think that he gained but I think he gained the world through these acts. You know what I mean?
But I think I think that's what gives it that quality of somebody who fell for you imagine it's almost like a diabolical thing of falling for this idea that you could gain all of that and somehow still be in control of your internal experience, still being right with your maker. It's kind of impossible to do it. I mean, he just got sucked. You could just picture him getting sucked into this awful, terrible darkness where he thought he was kind of his own little god. And Chris, don't you think? I mean, he embodies that verse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this guy has the capability to feel.
That's an interesting point. You think he's a psychopath, you mean?
Yeah, I don't think this is just this. We're just on count 2 here, real fast. The other, the part up on top here, that's the RICO indictment. Now we're just on to count 2, and all they did was just talk about one victim here, victim 1. You see it,
boy,
and look what he did. I mean, this guy is just reckless, absolutely reckless. Engage in, just engage, force, fraud, coercion. And then in count 3, we get into he's moving people all over the place. And then this one's interesting. They want his entire estate as asset forfeiture. So they're going to ask the government's going to ask the federal court for everything he owns. And that's what this last one is here. This guy, he's not capable, in my opinion, of feeling. And I think it comes from and this is the substitution of assets. Well, Your Honor, if you're not going to give it to us, we'll just go ahead and try to get everything else that we can. That's the indictment. And, you know, he's going to need a whole bunch of help from God. And I think he's past feeling, and he's probably hurt so many people. You know, when you bring in Matthew, right? The one thing I've always been balanced on, and that's probably because of all the murderers that I've interviewed and sat across. And I'm not talking about people in jail. I'm talking about where they tell you right from the, you know, you have to pull, it takes a long time to pull those teeth, you know, like pulling molars, but eventually they get to that place where they say, okay, I need to tell you something. And you finally get there. This guy reminds me of that kid who grew up. I had a kid that actually comes to my mind. His name was Quilly Harvey. And he had murdered a clerk, or a father, a father who was playing baseball with his sons. And he walked up behind him, and he shot him.
Oh.
Killed him dead. And when I had him in the interview, I asked him, I said, what the heck, over? He shot him in front of his 3 boys. They were playing baseball, and the father was hitting the ball to the boys. And Quilly walked out into the park where this father was with his boys, walked right up behind the guy and pretended like he was going to watch him for a minute, but instead he pulled a gun and boom, executed him. And I had him in the room, and I asked him, I said, you know, why? What, you know, why'd this all go on? You know what his answer was? I didn't like the color of his hat. Because he, in a gangway, was a Crip. And the father was wearing a red hat. This Puff Daddy reminds me of that guy. He wants to project into the world that he's a tough guy, you know, East Coast, West Coast. Okay. And remember I told you guys the other night about Scrappy, you know, the East Coast Crip. Yeah. Actually, he was Main Street. And, you know, I FI'd him one night, and a couple nights later, he executed 5 people without even thinking. I just think, you know, just reading this thing, the way he just so profoundly was just abusive from day one. Anybody that came into his circle of influence. I believe that goes way back to being a child, don't you, Gary? I mean, yes. You can tell us more about this than anybody.
I think the roots definitely have to be in one's childhood, because these are things that suggest a long-standing fantasy need. And, you know, those don't come out of nowhere. They fester for a very long time, and then they take shape. Usually sometime in adolescence and young adulthood, they take on very specific shape. And people go down different paths. Some of the fantasies people have are really extraordinary. I mean, for example, Jerry Brudos, the famous serial killer that was so infamously obsessed with shoes, he was somebody that in his youth had a very, very specific fantasy that he wanted to dig a hole in the dirt in the yard or something, and trap a girl there and just keep her there at length and do whatever it is he wanted to do with her living in the with her living in the soil there, right? Or you think about Gary Christ, the physician who kidnapped Barbara Jane Mackle, and just for some kind of weird reason, instead of just putting her up for ransom, which was the plan, he decided that he was going to put her in a coffin-like box buried underground with an air hose so that she could pull the air into the dirt and breathe, and that gave him some strange fantasy fulfillment. You know that those things can't come out of nowhere. I mean, there has to be some long-standing reason why you're obsessed with the idea of controlling and manipulating people like that. But it raises the question, is this somebody who was abused? Is this somebody who felt slighted? Is this somebody who felt small, unwanted, rejected? We don't know. But I think there has to be a root like that. And the trouble is it gets used sometimes as a kind of sympathy story. He was only doing these things because he himself was treated badly. What bothers me about this whole Puff Daddy thing is if let's say we were to find out that he was taking these women home and then he was killing them, how would he be any different than Rex Heuermann?
That's a great question.
How would he be any different? He'd be a guy that was picking up people and bringing them home and enjoying every manner of torment.
How do we know that some of these SA workers from international, places didn't disappear?
We don't. That's what I'm saying. He wouldn't be any different. He'd be just another guy. That's why Category 19 is so rare. That's what makes those so rare, is that they usually kill. So to have those ones that don't go beyond that is very odd.
Well, he's the kind of guy that can have somebody kill for him.
That's possible. Or he may be somebody that is so arrogant that he didn't feel the need to the concealment that is associated with eliminating. Because most of those people don't kill the victim as part of the pleasure. Most of them do it to eliminate the victim as a witness, or because what they're doing to the person has gone so far that the person expires. But some of them actually enjoy the killing as part of the sexual thrill. But most of them, if you read the literature, like Hazelwood and people like that, they start out doing that mostly because it's over. They've done too much. The person passes away, or they've got to get rid of the person. So what if you're so grandiose and arrogant that you don't think you have to eliminate the witness? Or you think you've done such a good job of, David Parker Ray used to tell people, I won't kill you unless you don't cooperate. And it's believed that he had many victims that were abused in the trailer that were then let out. But it's thought that some people didn't get out because they talked too much, or he was worried that they were going to, and he would kill them. So that's the whole thing. I'm not sure. Right.
To Leslie's comment, what kind of impact do you think that had on him?
Well, if you had a father that was engaging in that kind of lifestyle, and first of all, think about what you might internalize as a moral code and as a sense of how a person shows power over other people and manliness and all that. But to then have the person killed, might lead to the idea that, I'm going to be a bigger man than he was and no one's ever going to take me down, that kind of thing. I'll have lots of weapons. I'll have lots of people protecting me. I can imagine somebody feeling that way. And if you have a father that's killed when you're really young, it then puts the mom in a kind of a driver's seat that can have a different psychological effect, especially if you think of the mom as a harridan or a horrible person or cruel or something. I've always speculated that went on with Heuermann. I think the death of Heuermann's father made his mother, with whom he had a very conflicted dynamic, the boss. And he had a hard time with that. And I think that figured into his hostility toward women, that he would bind and torture and so forth and project onto them certain feelings, right? And notice that in the Heuermann case, it's a mixture of needing those women while also hating them. I want to keep you close to myself while also thinking you're garbage. So I bind and torture you, but I keep you somewhere where I can visit you always. You need them and you hate them at the same time. In this guy's case, he's keeping tapes. He's keeping them for days on end. It tells you something about this weird way of attaching. Do you think these people are interchangeable garbage, or do you get connected to them in some way that you want to keep a part of them forever and ever? It's sort of strange. And I think it tells you something about somebody who, had something happen to him that affected his capacity for normal attachments. And I think it's interesting if he had a parent that was killed. Sure. must have a significance. Unless it's true, Chris, like you say, that he's just dead in the soul. He just has no feelings at all. You know, that you have no compunction about a death at all. But my guess is there was a time when he was an ordinary kid, and then something happened and he kind of got twisted in a dark direction. I've never really believed the bad seed theory, you know, that some people are just born like that.
Yeah,
There are some brain abnormalities, but I think you need a mixture of bad treatment. And so, questioning if babies are born with a bad temper is more that people write in the sun. It's a great question. I'd win the Nobel Prize if I knew the answer to that one. I think it's probably a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
How about this one?
I don't know. I'm assuming the reason the person is asking that question is because of his what might be hypersexuality and grandiosity and certain traits like that. But remember that with these kind of offenders, it tends to be more their personality, because otherwise these things would only happen when he was in an episode. You know, he'd have a period where it all sort of came out, and then he would go into a period of kind of regretting it or being ashamed or getting help. This is more like it's your personality 24/7, right? And you're just doing this for years and years and years. So I just, there are people in the audience saying that they do think some people are born evil. The problem with that is those of us who study these people, I mean, Michael Stone and I would amass lists where we would look at how many offenders we could find that didn't have one single thing in their childhood to explain them having aberrant personalities, no abuse, no neglect, no, birth defects, no whatever. And, they're very rare. And when I say birth defects, I mean like you're conceived and then like your mom is doing a lot of drugs, or you have like a bad fall or something like that. You know, it's very hard to find those. It suggests that something has to happen to the person, or at least to the fetus. Something has to happen. You're not like conceived that way. You know what I'm saying? Something has to occur that affect. Now, are there brain areas that are associated with psychopathy? Yeah, right. I mean, absolutely. Frontal, the amygdala, certain areas that could be underactive or absent. But what it looks like is that you need bad treatment or negative experiences in addition. Because if you have an aberrant brain, but the world treats you well, you might be a fearless, sensation-seeking person that does pro-social things. Like you might be the guy that's most willing to throw himself on a grenade and save the whole platoon, right? I think you need to have that kind of brain plus bad treatment.
Like Buddy.
Buddy is adorable. And then he looks kind of a little, what is he armed with there at the bottom? What is he holding?
I don't know. It's top secret. He hasn't revealed it.
Oh, okay.
But he is ready to go to Springfield, Ohio. He heard the cats are being eaten.
Oh,
so
no.
Like he would care about that.
They're going to send him in.
You're telling him he doesn't chase cats.
You know, he drives a Cadillac.
Drives a Cadillac? Oh, God.
Yeah.
He's a bad fun.
He's headed to Springfield. We got him all, we sent him to Buds. You've heard of Buds.
Yeah, the Navy SEAL training. Yeah,
he's been to Buds, and I don't know what class he's been in, but
because you do underwater.
I'm not going to have him steal any stolen valor, but this is how he came out. He was trained.
To get there, he doesn't have to swim. You can get there by land.
He knows we're talking about him. He just came around the corner again.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he's a nut job. And when I talked about the cats, he looked right up like, what the heck, over?
Does he chase them?
Yeah. Does he chase cats?
Yeah.
Oh, man, he will.
That's why he's the wrong one to bring in. Because, I mean, I've watched him before whack a beetle around on the ground until the beetle stung him in the nose, and then he left it alone. I mean, he's a feisty little thing.
Yeah. They're a great breed. I used to love the Jack Russell Terrier on Frasier.
Oh, man.
Yeah. That was actually the dog that played Eddie was actually a dog named Moose, and then they used Moose's son Enzo. So it was like a father and son that played that dog on the show. But it's amazing how Jack Russell Terriers can even act. in movies and stuff. They can train them wonderfully. They're an amazing dog.
He is so smart, and we absolutely love him. And
Yeah.
you know, he's such a big part of this program too. And I figured we're an hour and 47 minutes into this,
Yeah.
so I want to kind of, slow it down a little bit. Josh, what say you about where the next steps on this thing? You know so much about the hip hop world, and you've been following this guy for a long time.
Not as much as I do, Josh.
Yeah, I know. Well,
my favorite Jeopardy category.
Well, I was going to say when we talk about Beethoven, we'll get back to you. But
I know nothing about it.
Oh, yeah, right.
A hole in my knowledge base. That's like two things you don't talk to me about, right? Like sports and hip hop. That's it. Stay off those two topics. I can't answer any question about any
sports.
No, I enjoy them, but I don't know anything about the history of them, right?
Right. Well, I think where this is going to go is I think it's gonna spread into politics. It's gonna spread already into the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
That there wouldn't surprise me if there's certain law enforcement that knew about what was going on. I think that this is just the very, very beginning. They say that this is an active and ongoing investigation, and that's why they're keeping him in jail, because they want more people to come forward. I do think eventually he will be charged in the Tupac case, and probably it wouldn't surprise me if there are other murders that he knew about or facilitated or he participated in that they're going to go after him on as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's a story that's going to keep getting worse.
Yeah.
There are probably going to be people on the recordings that they're going to identify, and then they're going to have to go find those people and tell them, when you were drugged up, you were victimized by this person. Chris, you know how that goes, right? Where they're going to identify these people. And that's heartbreaking, that some people that may have been so drugged up, dumped, whatever, they may not even remember it. Yeah. And they're going to see them on recordings and say, actually, and so that's really disturbing. And I think, Chris, my theory is that it's going to turn out that people that are now freed from having lived in terror of retaliation and so forth are going to start to come forward, and you're going to hear lots and lots of stories about how this manipulative, sadistic personality probably played out in many areas of life, right? Remember when Horman got arrested, and then they started talking to neighbors, and they discovered that a sadistic, nasty personality spilled out everywhere in arguments with neighbors, fights with people in stores, people, whatever, because you can't hide that. It's your personality always. And I just think all that stuff is going to start to come out. So
it's going to be really crazy. And I think this has been a great conversation. Yeah. If anybody has not had a chance to get over to the interview room, or excuse me, to the lab and hit the subscribe button over there, please do that. We're trying to grow Josh's channel as much as ours. He's a great guy, as you guys know. He's a dear friend. And of course, Dr. Gary Brucato. If you've not purchased his book, please get to Amazon, look up The New Evil, and you will not regret it. And if this is your first time here, can we just ask one thing? And that's the only thing we do ask, is that you hit the subscribe button. And we're growing and we're doing well. And we're so grateful for that. But that really helps us out, and it continues to, keep us going forward. And if you could hit the like button and then share this with all of your friends and family and social media groups, that would be outstanding. And, I got to be honest with you, the buddy, he keeps pushing my foot here. He heard about all the cats going down in Ohio. And immediately he says, I got to go to Bud's. And so we sent him to San Diego. This is how he came back. And he's headed that way. So if any of you live over there in Springfield, Ohio, where the cats are being, cat snacks, he's on his way. And by the way, he is amazing. Buddy is absolutely amazing. And he knows how to take them down. So you guys just be careful. We love you guys. Aloha. Josh, any final statement?
Just thanks for having me on. I enjoyed the conversation. Always good to see you, Dr. Gary, as well.
You too. And let's also tell people about the witness box.
Yeah, we have a podcast on Apple, Spotify, and you can find it on the podcast tab on my YouTube page. The witness box, and hopefully we'll have a new episode this week as well.
Awesome. Let's go to Hawaii. Aloha.
Hard working every day. I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts. Wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll